Sounds great. So hello, good evening, and welcome everyone. I'm Jennifer Love, and it's such a pleasure to be here this evening to share with you. And I would definitely like to first say kudos to each of you that is on this session this evening. You had the choice to be here with me or to be out in almost 80-degree weather, and you chose to be here. So everyone, give, give yourselves a hand clap or a pat on the back. We're really glad that you chose to be here, and I hope that this will be a worthwhile session that we will be able to engage and discuss and continue to become better as individuals and also as parents. So I really thank you, Marcy, for the wonderful introduction. Yes, have been here in Prince George's County for 18 years. It doesn't feel like that long because time just flies when you're having fun, right? Um, I was born and raised here, and I was raised actually between Prince George's County and Washington, D.C., and I currently live in Washington, D.C. I supervise language access and engagement, and people often don't know exactly what that is, but we are the office that provides all of the interpreting services across the district for families to be engaged in their children's education. Whenever there are meetings, whenever there are events like this one, interpreters are available. And we also provide all of the translations of written documents across the district. So whenever you receive a letter from the CEO, or if you receive any other information, or if there's a website or social media, our office supports all of those materials. I am very proud to also be a part of a local state organization called the Maryland ELL Family Involvement Network. And this is a network that really brings educators and practitioners together to support engagement for English learner families. And additionally, our district is leading the way in the professionalism of interpreting and translation, and we are part of something called the National ITE Interpreting and Translation Work Group in Education. So just a little bit about me, and these are a few pictures of us in this work, and also my family. My husband, he is a third grade teacher in Prince George's County. And my two boys, Javier, who is now 11 and in 5th grade, and Georgie, who is now 5 and is in kindergarten. So this has been a journey. So I come to you not only as a leader in the district, but also as a parent, because a parent is absolutely one of the most important roles in my life. So let's talk a little bit about being a parent. And I know that most of us on this session are parents. And remember that even if you don't have a biological child, if you are impacting the life of a child in any way, then you are providing love and guidance and nurturing for a child in the way that a parent would. So it's really important that we note that. So being a parent, we all know that it can be such a rewarding and joyful experience to see your children, to see them grow, to see them experience different things. So if you can take a moment, and I'm actually, since we are a very small group, I like for us to talk. So instead of dropping it in the chat, feel free to jump in so that we can really have some conversation this evening about being a parent, and as we move forward, talking a little bit more about parental resilience and bouncing back. So if you could share with us, what are some of the happiest moments you have experienced as a parent? And it could be one or two. And if anyone would like to begin, I think that you should be able to unmute yourself and jump right in.
Well, I'll jump in. I think, hi, I'm Lisa. My son Michael is 19 and he's a student at Ivy Mount School in Rockville. I think what's rewarding is seeing him reach different milestones and achievements that we didn't think would be possible when he was diagnosed with PDD NOS, years ago. And he's just flourishing. And I know a lot of parents can't say the same during the pandemic, but this e-learning situation has not impacted his growth, and he's just growing leaps and bounds. So, it's very rewarding to see everything starting to come together for him.
That's wonderful, Lisa. Thank you so much for sharing that. And
Sure.
it makes my heart full to hear you be able to say these wonderful things about your son.
Yeah, he's
Um,
just doing great, and I have to recognize that not everybody, has that same experience, so I also, can empathize when the situation isn't right for other people. I know for Michael, though, he's doing really well, so
that's great. That's great.
thank you.
Thank you for being empathetic to others' experiences too.
Yeah,
Thanks,
sure.
Lisa.
Thank you.
Who else would like to share some of the happiest moments you've experienced as a parent? And it doesn't have to be recent. It can be something from some time ago. Something else? A happy moment you've experienced as a parent. Well, I can share one of mine. So when the pandemic happened, my youngest, as I mentioned, is in kindergarten, and he was having some struggles with with phonemic awareness, and really being able to kind of pull everything together for literacy fluency. And one of the joys of that I've experienced recently is that he started to read, and he is starting to read CVC words. So the words that have a consonant, vowel, consonant, and he is doing it with such enthusiasm and confidence. And I think it's not the fact that is starting to read, it's the fact that he is confident about himself as a learner. And so he calls himself a learner, confident as a learner and a reader and a student. So this has definitely been a journey, but that is really one of the most rewarding experiences I feel like I've had lately. Is there anyone else who would like to share? I know that there's so many rewarding experiences. We want to definitely talk about the good. Elle, do you have something
I
you
was
want to
just
share?
going to say, sort of similar, seeing my son really thrive now. We're doing homeschooling now, and just getting to see him show an interest in a topic and really dive right in and explore it, and just learning things that I didn't think he could learn has just been really, really cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. And some of you, I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Inside Out, but of course, Joy is like she's always happy. She's that emotion that, keeps everyone kind of high and enjoying life. And that's what we wanted to focus on with this part of the conversation around the rewarding and the joyful experiences that we have as a parent. Is there anyone else who'd like to share anything? Okay, we will go ahead and move on because we know that it may not be all joy all the time, right? So being a parent definitely includes many other emotions that we all experience. And I think the most important part is to note that when we experience some of these other emotions, that they're often caused by pressures that are placed upon us. It's not necessarily our kids that are causing these emotions. So the personal pressures and the pressures that may be in relation to our children peripherally may make us feel some of these other emotions. So I'm using I'm using Inside Out because it's really one of a really good movie in my personal opinion around helping children to understand more about their emotions and being able to connect those. So sadness, joy, fear, disgust, and anger. I will be honest, I have experienced all of those probably within the past week. But it's really all about how we learn to become more resilient and deal with the emotions and the stressors that are going to continue to impact us. It's just a normal part of life that we are going to have some stress. So stress is definitely real. And parenting can be stressful. Raise your hand if parenting is sometimes stressful for you. So the stressors really are broken down into several different factors or conditions. And it's important that we think about what it is that are sometimes our stressors, because it's sometimes being able to check those stressors and understand what is stressing us that helps us to move through them and figure out strategies to be able to be less stressed and for it not to impact our families. So, of course, we, have typical events and life changes that we all experience at some points in our lives. This can be something like moving to a new community. Maybe your child is moving, maybe you are moving to a new home, and that means your child may have to start at a new school or in a new school district. Those are tremendous changes, and they're stressful on lots of levels. I'm thinking about when I was a new mom years ago, and those typical events that happen almost every night where I wasn't able to soothe my crying baby. I just didn't know what to do. Super stressful because babies cry, but we want to be able to soothe and nurture them. So that's just a regular stress that can occur, right? Then there's those things like unexpected events, things that we don't anticipate, but they really can hit us hard and be incredibly stressful. So I know that, you know, we are still in a pandemic, and our thoughts are with many who have maybe lost a job. And it was something totally unanticipated. The pandemic was totally unanticipated. I'm sure that, you know, if you ask many of us 5 years ago, did we ever think that we could be with, you know, going through a pandemic? We would have told you probably not. But these are some of the unexpected events that can be incredibly stressful. Also, you know, the reality of receiving news of a medical diagnosis, or having to have some type of diagnosis adjustment or new treatments. All of these unexpected events can be very stressful, and it's important that we are not only aware of how these events can impact us, but how our reactions can impact our children. Then there's individual factors, and this is a reality. You know, some of us have had personal past traumatic experiences. Some that we have maybe been able to resolve, and others that we might not have been able to resolve. Some of us may have grown up in toxic situations that induced toxic stress for us as children and adolescents and teenagers. And it's very difficult to be able to resolve some of that stress and some of that toxicity that has existed in your experiences. But it's important that we can acknowledge it and be able to look for ways to resolve that stress so that it's not part of the lives of our children. Then also there are social factors, and social factors can be anything from a divorce or relationship breakup, which are real and real everyday events. And then the feelings that may go along with something like a social factor, like feelings of isolation or even feelings of depression. And once again, it's important that we're keeping these things in focus so that we are reminded that our own personal stressors can be impactful for our families. And then community and societal factors. So things that may occur day to day, like discrimination. There may be families who are struggling with poverty, natural disaster, clearly, pandemic. These are some of the community and societal factors, of course, that can create these high levels of stress. So one thing that we do know is that when there are these stressful factors, parents are more likely to achieve healthy outcomes and favorable outcomes for their families and for themselves by practicing resilience. And what is resilience, you might say? Resilience is the process of being able to manage stressful situations. So we've got a couple of questions that we can take a look at and discuss together. So as we're thinking about building resilience, there's really this balance of strength and stress. Where is it that you draw your strength? And I'd also like you to think about what kind of daily worries and frustrations do you deal with? And what are some of the things that you currently do to solve them? And additionally, how are you able to meet your children's needs when you are stressed? So let's start with this first one around where do you draw your strength? So please feel free to chime in. This is definitely a discussion, and anyone can participate. Where do you draw your strength? Sure.
Dr. Love.
Is that Yvette? Yes.
Yes. Hi. Yes. Fortunately for me, my children all survived me and I survived them. And they're grown. But I distinctly remember drawing strength on other parents, whether they would be in my family, in the church. And I had a sort of some senior grandparents who looking back shared some of their insights, and it definitely helped me and the children survive.
Mhm. Awesome. Thank you for sharing that, Yvette. So having a community of other parents who are, there's one thing that's really an important quote, and it's that you are not the first person or the last person to go through what you're going through. And knowing that really can help you to get through some things, right? And then being able to bounce off of others and know that there are others in your community. So thank you, Yvette, for sharing that. And it's wonderful to hear that your children are grown. They made it. You made it. Okay, I'm gonna jump to Elle. Is it Elle or Ellie? She had her hand raised. Okay. Well,
And
she
I
might
think
not.
she put something in the chat. She said she draws
Okay.
her strength from her friends and family, especially her quilting friends.
Oh, awesome. Thank you, Ellie, for putting that in the chat. So yes, drawing strength from those around her, and quilting. What a wonderful hobby. My mother-in-law is a quilter, and we have been collecting quilts since I met my husband. Fantastic. It's really important that you're able to find these places to draw strength. Anyone else want to share where they draw their strength? I too draw my strength from my friends, and actually from my mother. My mother is an amazing woman. She was an educator, and she just has a really great way of communicating that has really been helpful to me as a parent to kind of get me refocused. And she really gives great advice. So like that soothing baby, back to that. She was really good at doing that, and she's always there for me when I need to have a little uplift. So what kinds of daily worries and frustrations do you deal with? And what are some of the ways that you solve them? Just the day to day. No frustrations?
I don't know if you want us to put this in the chat or unmute and talk.
Yeah, you can unmute and talk. I'm sorry.
Okay.
Yes,
No,
we're
okay,
discussing
good.
here. Mhm. We're
So my
pretending we're in a
son-
workshop room.
Okay. So my son is transitioning, he's in his last year of school. So I
Okay.
think my biggest fears and worries are, will he find a job? Will he find a full-time job? Will he be able to stay employed? Is college right for him? Are we talking non-credit classes? Are we talking credit classes? So I guess it's his future. This transition stage is very stressful, and it's very critical. And there's not a one size fits all, and so I think my biggest fear is letting him down, or failure. Another way to put it is failure, letting him down. And so that's really kind of what motivates me, but it never ends. I've been spending every free minute that I have trying to advance the ball, as it were. So it's just really stressful, and I'm happy to do it. It's just that there's no real end in sight, because there's always another phase,
Mhm, mhm.
along with.
Yeah, but you've definitely communicated how you've been solving the frustration or the worry that you have. I think that you need not worry that you will be a failure to your son. You cannot be a failure to your son because you have continued to uplift him and bring him this far.
Yeah.
Has the transition team, so I'm assuming that part of your solution is working closely with the transition team to ensure that he has.
No, there is no transition team at the school. I'm not sure if it's because of the pandemic, but they've just dropped off the radar.
Okay.
And I really can't count on them. So ironically, the school put a few parents in touch whose kids are in similar programs. And we've all known each other, but there's about 7 of us that on our own got together and made like a parent support group. And so we do a Zoom call like every 3 to 4 weeks. And then in between, we email the entire group. It's like an entire group chat, and all of our kids are in the same relative age and same relative transition period. And so if I find out about a great doors program, or if I find out about something not so great with applying for Social Security, whatever it is, we just constantly share information. And either through the every 4-week Zoom meeting or just emails. It's been great.
That is fantastic. What a
Yeah.
network. What a network
Yeah,
that
it's
you really,
wonderful.
so I bet, Lisa, if any of those other parents who are part of that group were on here tonight, then they would be saying the same thing about how supportive that is to be
Yeah,
able to lean on
absolutely.
others, right?
Absolutely. I've seen parents that didn't previously know how to get a vaccine
Mhm.
become vaccinated. I've seen parents that didn't know about DOORS programs sign up, and so we're
Mhm.
seeing like all these milestones within our group over just the last couple months. It's just been really nice. We're just really helping each other.
That's great. Sharing
Yeah.
resources. That's
Yeah.
awesome. That's
Yep.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing, Lisa. All right. Anyone else? Any frustrations that you have, and how you're working on solving them?
So Elle is trying to get her little one to sleep, so she's using the chat right now. She said that
Okay.
daily frustrations are with meal times, trying to get him to eat a healthy, varied diet, and to get him to take his medications that help his GI situation. It takes forever and is frustrating. And she says her RDI group has also served that role and is super helpful.
Oh, that's great. Thank you. Is it Elle or Ellie? Elle. I see now. Thank you so much for sharing that. Yes, super, super, super challenging situations. I think we can all relate on some level. But that is great that you're continuing to push forward. So thinking about when we are stressed, how are we able to meet our children's needs when we're stressed? What are some of the things that we have to do to meet our children's needs when we're stressed? Lisa, I know that you talked about being stressed, about the transition situation. Um, how are you able to still meet your son's needs, his current needs, even though that may be a stressful
Yeah,
situation?
I've got to say that luckily, my husband and I are a good kind of balance, because when I'm at my wit's end, he kind of steps in. And I know, not every household has that balance. So we're pretty lucky here in that, we're the two people that know him the best. So it's a very good, when I can't take it anymore, he steps in, vice versa. So I think that's really it. And it's,
Mhm.
a lot of times it's day by day, or
Yep.
it's topic by topic. It's all you can do some days,
Sure, sure.
know.
Yeah, yeah. And that really takes us into our next topic around this building resilience, right? And the social connections. And you're mentioning how important your husband is. And I think we have, begun to talk about people and groups that are sources of support. And I would also add, that we have to be real with ourselves and know that there are some groups or some people who may be sources of stress. And we have to acknowledge that and know how we can fit a balance around that, because sometimes there may be family members who may be sources of stress, or it may be work that is not avoidable, that's a source of stress. But then to think about kind of some of the conversation that has brought us here around what are the things that can really be sources of support for us. So COVID, as we know, has changed our immediate ability to just reach out, to drop by a friend's house, or to have someone else pick up our kid, or to go out for Friday afternoon, hang out, or to the movies, or whatever the case is. So I know that, Lisa, you mentioned you do have your husband who helps you out once in a while. Are there any other folks on the line who are members of a group or organization from which you're able to draw some strength and support?
Elle also said she has her husband.
Uh-huh, uh-huh, okay. And then other people that you can call for advice or just to talk? Ebony or Miss Speaks, feel free to jump in. We're just having some discussion this evening.
Hi, this is Ebony. I recently joined Chad, and I was thinking about joining the PG chapter that newly developed.
Okay.
But most of the ways that I get assisted is things like this, and I've been on attitude webinars and things like that. So I'm trying to get more involved with a support group But I normally, lately, I've just been connecting with different webinars that have been available, and that's been helpful.
Great, great. Thank you, Ebony, for sharing. Well, we hope that this will be a great evening for you and helpful for you. Because sometimes it's what's most important. I think this is kind of how we started our conversation. It's really sometimes just important to be able to talk to people and be able to communicate about some of the things that are going on. And it's amazing some of the resources that start to fly and get connected by just being able to talk. Thank you for sharing, Ebony. So as we're continuing to build our resilience individually, specifically, there are some things that we can really do to manage our stress. And I know sometimes we may like flip through magazines, or we may see a little pop up on our Facebook that tells us about managing stress. Somehow those algorithms on Facebook always know when we're, we're going down a certain path, right? But these are some of the things that I wanted to share that are really very concrete. And as parents, we know that life can be overwhelming. There are a million things to do, a million things to be done. But it's important that we are finding ways that help us to manage our stress, which will in turn will help us to manage our relationships and our ability to be responsive and be parents, be the best parents that we can be. So the first one, and I think one that has now become my favorite since the weather has started to get nice, is to get outside. And I see Lisa she's got to jump on all of us being outside on the patio. But getting outside, and it's amazing what getting outside can do. And even if, for many of us who may be working, taking time to get outside during your lunch break, to take a walk, or taking time to get outside. Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, can you see Dad, honey? I'm sorry. There we go. Go see Dad, he's in the room. So getting outside to really just enjoy nature and enjoy the weather. And then research has also found that, even if you aren't able to get outside much, that adding plants to your space is a very viable way to increase of course, your levels of oxygen and lower your stress levels. So for any of those who may have a green thumb, that is an option. Also, no matter how overwhelmed you are, to make some time to move or exercise, even if it's at your desk, doing some leg stretches, getting up and moving around, even having little dance parties with your kids. I have learned that with my children, even though they may not want to do anything organized, if I turn some music on in the kitchen and call out dance party, they will all come join me. Even though mama's not a great dancer, they love to dance. So it's time, it's time for us to get some movement in and some exercise. The other thing about managing stress is the more that we're able to create a consistent schedule, the more that everyone in the household is able to anticipate what's happening. So whether it's anticipating that after dinner, this is what happens, then you're going to have a bath or a shower, and then there'll be a story before bed, making sure that the schedule, even though the schedule will sometimes fluctuate because lots of different things will happen in the course of, a day or a week, but creating as much consistency as you can. We know that our children respond to consistency, even though we think they wouldn't because they're kids. Consistency is really good. And then also connecting with your spiritual practice or positive affirmations, whatever your religion, knowing that there is something that can keep you grounded, or meditation that's able to keep you focused. That is really helpful in managing stress. One of my favorites is bathing or taking a shower. So water is incredibly soothing. And the research shows that water is what brings us back to feeling like we are in our own mother's womb. So bathing and showering, it's amazing how it can just like wash away all of the feelings and emotions that you may be feeling, and just overall make you feel better and lose some of that stress. Additionally, finding ways to regularly practice gratitude. Sometimes when you're in the clouds, it's hard to see all the things to be thankful for, but we all have so many. And even if it's one of the things I've started working with my sons on doing to kind of model gratitude is for them to write thank you notes. Even if it wasn't something very, it doesn't have to necessarily be a gift, a tangible gift that someone has given them. But they've started writing thank you notes if someone, did something extra special for them, or if someone did or said something that made them feel, a certain way. So we have a neighbor that was really just kind of praising my older son around his ability to work with his brother. So I talked to them about writing a thank you note, because it's important that we are really communicating to our kids how important it is to be thankful and to practice that gratitude. Another thing around managing stress, and I know that this one may be a little challenging, but avoiding excess caffeine, sugar, tobacco, alcohol. While, I admit to being a huge coffee drinker every single day, we all know that with all of those things, they can become vices if we have too much of them. And what happens just physiologically is that we always have this, you feel really good, and then there's always kind of this letdown, and it doesn't really help us in our health. So avoiding those things. And then finally, sometimes just taking a minute to sit back and adjusting your lens to see a more positive light. So, sometimes, and I admit that, especially during something like a pandemic, right? It can be kind of tempting and easy to ruminate. You ruminate around the things that are not going so great, and oh, I wish this could be better, or it's always going to be this way. But trying to take a step back and adjust your lens to see things in a more positive light is absolutely something that can help to manage that stress. And I think that when you're doing that, even taking the time to talk to yourself as if you were offering advice to like your best friends, that really the odds are that you're going to have really compassionate and positive things to say, because that's how we talk to others. And it's really the way that we should also be able to talk to ourselves, to keep ourselves up and to keep ourselves positive.
So Elle had a couple things in the chat. She said that these things really help. She learned a lot about them last year at our sessions, and they really help, and that she's been hiking, and that's been huge. And that she finds writing notes to her dad, who passed away almost 2 years ago, helps put things in perspective for her.
Wonderful. That is great, Elle. And yes, Yvette, that Elle is being able to share how she's able to continue to gain strength. And I think that sometimes through loss, we are able to delve into our deepest and most forceful strength, because we know that the people who we have lost still their their teachings and who they are still reside in us. Thank you for sharing that, Elle. So we are going to hear now from someone who usually has some pretty good things to say, some pretty insightful things to say. But knowing that self-care isn't selfish, it's not selfish for us to need to take care of ourselves, because we are constantly taking care of others and our children. So let's hear for a moment from the one and only Oprah Winfrey.
The truth is, you don't have anything to give that you don't have. So you have to keep your own self full. That's your job. One of my daughters is here today from Oprah Winfrey Leadership Academy. Stand up today so everybody can see you. You're going to end your first year soon. Oh my God, it's first year. I say to my girls all of the time that your real work is to figure out where your power base is and to work on the alignment of your personality, your gifts that you have to give, with the real reason why you're here. That's the number one thing you have to do, is to work on yourself and to fill yourself up and keep your cup full, keep yourself full. Now, I used to be afraid of that. I used to be afraid, particularly from people who say, oh, she's so full of herself. She's so full of herself. And now I embrace it. I consider it a compliment that I am full of myself, because you only when you're full, I'm full, I'm overflowing, my cup runneth over. I have so much to offer and so much to give. And I am not afraid of honoring myself. You know, it's miraculous when you think about it. First of all, for me, my father and mother never married. They had sex one time underneath an oak tree because she was wearing a poodle skirt in 1953. And my dad, to this day, says, I want to know what's under that skirt. That's what I want to know. He wanted to know what was under the skirt. They didn't really have a relationship. She wanted one, but you know, he went under the skirt and then that was it. And one time under the oak tree, bam, Renaissance. Woman is born. It happened there. That's why I know my life is bigger than that. My life has to be bigger, as yours is, bigger than a poodle skirt. It's much bigger. The design, the reason why I'm here, it's much bigger than, oh, I think I want to see what's under there. So the ability to take care of that, to honor yourself and that which is greater than yourself, that which was the reason for your being here. That there's no selflessness in that, because only through that do you have the ability to offer yourself, your whole self, your full expression of who you are to the rest of the world.
Okay. There we go. So offering our whole selves and being able to know that we are full. Can you see my, okay, here we are. And know that our cups are full and that we have to be full to be able to give to our children and give to our families. So what are our hopes and dreams for our children and for our families? What are your hopes and dreams? And you can also encompass with this, what worries do you have about ensuring those hopes and dreams are met? At least I think you were able to share some of this. What are you doing today or do you want to do to help achieve those hopes and dreams? You're right, Elle. Being able to keep your cup full is a tall order.
Dr. Love, can I share for a
Sure,
second?
absolutely.
Just to kind of add a perspective, it is great to be where I am now so that I can imbue hope in others. My son, who has ADHD, it was such a struggle through adolescence. And I had so many worries about whether he was going to make it, whether anything that we tried to teach or put in him, is it in there anywhere? What's going to happen to him in the future? And I can say now, being on the other side, like I said before, it was very helpful to hear from others who had gone before, who just reassured me that it was going to be okay, that it was going to all come together for him at some point, and it has. But his path looks so different than what I expected and what I hoped for. I had a sort of a straight line path, and me and my husband did for him, and it didn't look like that. But in the end, he's okay. He's doing just fine.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that, Yvette. What other hopes and dreams do we have? Anyone? I know for my children, for both the 11-year-old and the 5-year-old, you know, I think about who they'll be as adults, and I think about how that will look. And kind of as Yvette mentioned, I try not to be too focused on their pathway there because the pathway is probably not going to look like the pathway I lay. But I want them to be happy. I want them to be contributors to society. I want them to care about others. Those are really the fundamental premises of what I want for my kids. Of course, you know, success is not easily defined. You know, do I want them to make a lot of money? You know, if that's what makes them happy, sure. But I want them to be able to care about other people and care and know that there is something greater than themselves. I don't want them to ever lose sight of that. And I think that you know, with that balance kind of brings us back to what Oprah was telling us about, is that in knowing that there's something greater than ourselves, we still have to remember that we are of absolute importance to be full and to be able to take care of our own being, to be able to give and support and serve others. Okay, so we're going to move along. I think we've got a couple of chats. Elle says she wants her son to be happy, so similar, and she wants him to feel competent, caring for others, and being able to care for himself. And yeah, Elle, I'm with you. I think that is totally an important part of what families often want for their children. Thank you for sharing that. So as we think about additional ways around building resilience, from time to time, we all are in need of some concrete support. And what's most important is that we never feel like we cannot ask. And I think that is one of the things that sometimes parents can have trouble and have challenges with, feeling that they can ask or they can reach out for help when they need it. The world is comprised of communities. It's comprised of villages of people who can support each other. And it's critical that we lean into our resources when we need support. I know Lisa mentioned how she's leaned into her resources of the parent support group that she's part of. And sometimes that may just mean, you know, being reflective on how we may have to readjust our lives so that we can lean in to these support resources, but never, ever, ever being afraid to ask for that support. So in building resilience around concrete support, I'm going to ask for each of you to identify one concrete need and think about this moment right now at 7:19 p.m. on April the 6th, 2021. Identify one concrete need that, if met, would lighten your burden. One concrete need that, if met, would lighten your burden. And then I'd like you to think about at least three, it doesn't have to be three, it couldn't be two possible ways to get that need met. So for example, it could be asking someone specific that you have in mind for help. It could be maybe that we are brainstorming about an organization that could possibly assist. Depending on what the need is, it could mean cutting back on an expense, or it could mean shifting. But think about one concrete need, and then we're going to come together and talk about some of the needs and what resources may exist among this group to be able to support getting these needs met. Okay, is there someone that would like to begin? Is there one concrete need we can throw out there?
Rashima says she needs rest, a break, help from a loved one to assist.
Yes. Thank you, Rashima, for sharing. So rest and a break, help from a loved one. Thank you, Rashima, for sharing that. I think that rest is one of those really, really critical, invaluable self-care components that we really have to be able to find time for. I would ask, you know, if anyone has any support or resources to share. I know that there are options for respite care. and maybe you have a loved one, Rashima, that is close by that may be able to assist. I know that COVID has presented its own set of challenges around, being able to call up a family member to be able to assist. Is there anyone else who has some other suggestions for Rashima around rest? All right, Rashima. So it sounds like you're going to call on your loved one. That sounds good. I think it's important that you make the time to do it so that you are able to get some rest and recharge yourself to fill your cup. Thank you for sharing. Elle has also shared for her tonight, one of the concrete needs was how to feed her family. They had RDI at 5 and then this workshop, and she met the need by getting takeout tonight and supporting a local business, which made her feel good. And I think that, thinking of all of those facets of the decision that she made, and telling her husband that she had to have a break, and it made a world of difference. I think the important part that both of what Rashima has shared and Elle has shared is that there are people around us who are able to help us with these concrete needs, and reaching out for that help is totally valid, and we can get that help so we can fill our own cups. Thank you for sharing. Okay. Does anyone have a poster like this in their house? I know I do. We have one in the bathroom. It doesn't say exactly this, but it's something similar about in this house, we, make mistakes, we apologize, we have fun, we forgive each other, we hug, we give second chances, and we love each other. And this is an awesome poster. And I think one of the things that this poster really does is it kind of recenters my kids. I actually will literally take them to the poster, remind them to go to the poster to remind themselves of what our expectations are in the home. And one of the things that really kind of lends itself to this type of poster that many people have posted in their home is some of the questions that really can come from what is really happening in our home, and how are we as parents ensuring that our resilience is continuing to be built so that it's passed on to our children. So I posed some of these questions, kind of similar to the poster that we find in our home. In our home, do we feel safe to express emotions? And this may be a yes or a no, or it may have some caveats, but I just want you to think, you don't have to share, but think about what it means for you and your own family. Do we model empathy towards each other in our home? Do we set clear expectations and limits? So maybe it may be something like people in our home or people in our family don't hurt each other. Do we try to separate our emotions from our actions? And that may be reminding our children. I know I often have to remind my children that it's okay to be angry, but we don't have to hit when we are angry. The next one is around how do we, in our home, do we greet others and do we take turns? So all of these things that are really digging a little deeper in what are the things and what are the expectations in a home. And then finally, do we problem solve together? And do we also encourage our children to problem solve independently? So for example, what do you think for a kid, what should a kid do if another child calls them a bad name? To really get kids to think about how they would be responsive in situations. So I think that these questions really lend themselves well to all the things that we, kind of think about with this poster scenario about the things that happen in our house, in our homes. But I think fundamentally, we want to ensure that our children are feeling and hearing love, and they're feeling and hearing these expectations, and understanding emotions and understanding appropriate actions, and understanding how to problem solve to continue to be better. So I want to close with an activity for all of us to do quickly together. I'd like for each of you to think of an adult who you loved as a child. What was it about the relationship with that adult that made it so important to you? and think about what elements of that relationship can you replicate in your relationship with your child or with your children. So take a moment to think about the adult. It may be a parent, it may be it may not, it may be a neighbor, it may be an older sibling, it may be an aunt, it may be a teacher. Think about the adult that you loved as a child and the elements of that relationship that you can replicate in your relationship with your children. And whenever someone is ready, you can go ahead and jump in and share a little bit with us.
Hi, this is Ebony again.
Hi, Ebony.
I spent a lot of time with my grandfather when I was a child, and he was living. We played cards a lot, and he just was always there. He was a good cook, so he would cook me all kind of favorite things. Like he could bake really well. So I spent a lot of time with him. So I can replicate that by doing the same for my son, especially now that we're home so much. I find myself cooking more and trying to spend more quality time playing games and things with him.
Oh, that is awesome, Ebony. And really, you know, your son getting to see what it was like being with your grandfather. Have you been able to teach your son a little bit around the kitchen?
Yes, he tried to do lasagna, so that's one of his
Oh,
favorite dishes. So he did
oh,
try
wow.
try that out.
Oh, that's
That was
great.
fun to watch.
How did it taste? Did it come out good?
Yeah, that
You're
was pretty
laughing.
good. It came out pretty good.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. But that is a really important element of what you have carried generationally from your granddad, to be able to offer to your son. And that's wonderful. That is really wonderful. Thank you for sharing that. And I, you know, I think what Ebony has mentioned really resonates, that the pandemic, while it has definitely had its lows, it's also, there's so much silver lining that I think that we really can reflect upon with how it has offered us the opportunity to really hone in on some of those things that we may have missed, or we didn't have the opportunity to connect with our children, as Ebony mentioned, on cooking, or playing board games. I mean, we pulled out so many board games in the past 6 months. They're all like stacked behind me. So yeah, we have Elle saying that Ebony said it perfectly. Yeah, I think Ebony, that was absolutely on point. Is there anyone else that has a special relationship that they'd like to share?
Well, I guess my sister, when I was, my sister is 11 years older than me. So she was in a lot of ways like a second mother to me when I was growing up. And she just always found the time to make me feel really important, really special, and just brought me everywhere with her. And without really realizing it, I guess that's probably what I do with my son. Um, you know, if it wasn't for COVID, I mean, we go everywhere together. He's like my weekend buddy, every errand, you know, it's been different, obviously, but I think I replicate that without necessarily realizing it.
Absolutely,
You know?
absolutely. Nothing like an older sibling. Older siblings are superheroes. They really are. They truly are. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you, Ebony. Thank you, Lisa. And thank you all, even if you didn't share out loud. I know that you're thinking about someone who you loved, an adult who you loved, and thinking about how you will connect this with your relationship with your own children. I'd like to thank you all for the opportunity to be with you this evening. I wish each of you health, strength, and continued growth with your families, and also continuing to fill up your own cups to make sure that you can be healthy and strong for those around you.